I want to ask you about a moment in last night's vice presidential debate. And listen to what J.D. Vance said specifically about the issue of reproductive rights when he was asked about it.
I grew up in a working class family in a neighborhood where I knew a lot of young women who had unplanned pregnancies and decided to terminate those pregnancies because they feel like they didn't have any other options. And, you know, one of them is actually very dear to me. And I know she's watching tonight, and I love you. And she told me something a couple years ago that she felt like if she hadn't had that abortion, that it would have destroyed her life because she was in an abusive relationship. We've got to do so much better of a job at earning the American people's trust back on this issue where they frankly just don't trust us.
An undecided female voter in CNN's post-debate focus group said last night that answer made her more encouraged about the GOP ticket because she said he sounded more progressive than she expected. What would you say to her?
Well, let me first just say, since we're turning to domestic, that our thoughts and prayers of the people of North Carolina and the South for the assault that they were under from the weather. It's so sad that people lost their lives, their homes, so much, their place of business and the rest. So personally, condolences who lost family members. In terms of last night, what can you say? You saw the difference between truth and trust in terms of Walz and Khan and Slick in terms of this administration is for an abortion ban, a national abortion ban. And when they say leave it up to the states have their own abortion bans. We need to protect them by having Roe v. Wade be the national policy of our country. I don't know what hope she saw in that. A woman's right to choose is to choose to have the child or not have the child, or to engage in contraception, which the Republicans, 194 of them voted women do not have the right to contraception. So understand this, women of America. I'm a mother of five children, 6 years and 7 days. I have 2 birthdays this week of my children, and it is wonderful for me, but not up to me to decide what other people should do, nor is it up to Vance or Trump. So understand this, in their 2025 project, they not only want to have a federal ban on abortion, they want to close the Department of Education to educate those children. The list goes on and on. I think that that was clever to use that personal connection, but it isn't real in terms of women having the right to make their own decisions and not politicians making their decisions for them. This is a very serious matter. I mean, first, let me just put it in perspective. First of all, they weren't telling the truth about it, A. They weren't telling the truth about January 6th. How about him saying the president was encouraging peaceful demonstrations at the Capitol? How about him saying the president was for a peaceful transfer of power on January 20th? How about him saying that President Obama saved the Affordable Care Act? Give me a break. This is over 60 times the Republicans tried to take it down. They failed because of just the American people, but also John McCain. So what we saw there was misrepresentation after misrepresentation. But Khan and Slick, as opposed to Walz, who was trustworthy and truthful about what he had to say, his sincerity, his authenticity, I think, won the night. But in terms of a woman's right to choose, you cannot, I mean, 8 Republicans voted for a woman to have the right to contraception. 8
All right.
In the Congress. 8. 194 no. So again, unfortunately, that Khan may have worked on that young woman, but I hope that she never has to be subjected to the policies that they will subject her to. This is about truth versus Khan. I congratulate Tim Walz.
Let's discuss all of this and more with my terrific reporters here. From the New York Times, Maureen Dowd, Carl Hulse, also from the New York Times, and Bloomberg and CNN's Nia Malika Henderson. Thank you so much for being here. We're all a little bleary-eyed. Maureen, what's your takeaway from last night?
Well, I thought that J.D. Vance, I thought it was very chilling because he was able to present himself as a very reasonable person. And, you know, David Axelrod had suggested that it was going to be the golden retriever versus the wolf. Yeah. But J.D. Vance had on his golden retriever disguise, and he, you know, he just was able to present himself as something he is not. And he was able to act like he wasn't, you know, the liar and mean-spirited attack dog that he has been.
But Walz it was interesting because Walz didn't call him on a lot.
Right.
Or like anything. He made a decision to just do his own thing.
Only in the last question.
And what did you think of that?
Well, I think that Walz was able to rip off the mask at the very end, but in the meantime, J.D. Vance was able to come across as, you know, a very nice, reasonable guy.
And nice and reasonable were probably some of the watchwords from just kind of the overall vibe. Since it's 2024, we just have to talk about vibes of the night. I want to play some of the exchanges and just show our viewers how civil it was in tone and tenor.
I actually think, I agree with you. I think you want to solve this problem, but I don't think that Kamala Harris does.
I agree with a lot of what Senator Vance said about what's happening. His running mate, though, does not.
Maybe you're free to disagree with me on this and explain this to me.
I 100% believe that Senator Vance hates it when these kids, it's abhorrent and it breaks your heart. I agree with that. But that's not far enough.
First of all, I didn't know that your 17-year-old witnessed a shooting. And I'm sorry about that, and I hope that he's doing okay.
So.
Christ have mercy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was unexpected. And you sort of saw certainly J.D. Vance's objective going in, which was to humanize himself, right? It was sort of the kinder, gentler version of J.D. Vance. You know, all this time we'd been talking about J.D. Vance as a weird guy, castigating childless cat ladies, saying women without children should have no real place in the public square. And so there he was, name-dropping his mother, name-dropping a friend of his who supposedly got an abortion, constantly calling Margaret by her first name. So that you could see what he was up to there. There was sort of a rehabilitation effort that Vance was advancing for himself. What he didn't do as much, and what I expected him to do, was go after Kamala Harris in kind of pithy ways, pithy and memorable ways. There wasn't a lot of that, really, at all. And so, I mean, part of me was wondering, like, this seemed to be more about Vance, more about his future, more about maybe a 2028 run than necessarily what was going on here. I don't know what Walz's strategy was going in. It felt like he was going through the whole time feeling like there were landmines all around him that he needed to avoid. Whether it was, you know, he can be short-tempered at times. He seemed to be avoiding that. He didn't want to come across as too progressive, the guy from Minnesota. So he, I thought, was authentic. That was, I think, the Tim Walz that a lot of people who've covered him for years recognized. It wasn't the Tim Walz that people, I think, recognized from cable news, the sort of pithy guy.
And it could be the last debate we're going to see on the presidential, vice presidential level this cycle. Except maybe if Donald Trump sees the headline in the Wall Street Journal from the editorial board, Vance makes a better case for Trump than Trump.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, watching that last night, you know, that Donald Trump's not going to like seeing all this reviews on the right today that, boy, J.D. Vance is the great debater, blah, blah, blah. As a Midwesterner, I think I could say that was a Midwestern debate, right, the way they were going at each other. But I do think that last snippet that you played is going to be the year no JFK moment from this vice presidential debate. And, you know, I would say Walz was really nervous, and it just showed. And it reminded me a little bit of the Tim Kaine debate in 2016. You remember that he
Yeah.
kind of didn't meet the moment either. And, you know, so Walz got better as it went on. And there were some things that he talked about that he really knew a lot about, including health care and abortion. And then, of course, at the end.